Are you tired of financial gurus telling you to cut up your credit cards and live below your means, yet you still feel stuck in the rat race? The painful reality is that scrimping and saving often leads to a life of being cheap rather than rich, while the wealthy are actually using debt to build their fortunes. Robert Kiyosaki reveals that the secret isn't eliminating debt, but distinguishing between bad debt that you pay for and good debt that someone else pays off for you. Instead of denying yourself the things you love, learn how to increase your financial intelligence to buy assets that pay for your liabilities, just like Kiyosaki used a real estate investment to pay for his Porsche. Stop fearing leverage and discover how to turn your bad debt into good debt to achieve true financial freedom without sacrificing your lifestyle. Let's find out more. This is a summary of the book Rich Dad's Guide to Becoming Rich Without Cutting Up Your Credit Cards.
It is certainly a provocative title, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It just flies in the face of pretty much everything we are taught about personal finance.
It's more than just provocative. It feels a bit like heresy, you know? Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. I'm really looking forward to unpacking this because, frankly, when you look at the landscape of financial advice today, it's dominated by a single narrative.
Mm-hmm. The debt is evil narrative.
Exactly. You know the one. Debt is the absolute enemy. Cash is the only king. And if you want to be wealthy, you have to suffer. You've got to, eat the rice and beans, clip the coupons, drive that beat-up sedan until the wheels literally fall off.
Right. It's almost presented as a moral failing to want nice things.
It is. It's like a moral crusade against enjoyment. But here we have Robert Kiyosaki basically throwing up his hands and saying, wait a minute, that is not how the people at the top of the pyramid are actually playing the game.
Right. And to really get what he's saying in this book, we have to put it in its proper context. This isn't some manual on how to get rich quick, and it is definitely not a checklist for, gambling your way to wealth.
Okay, so what's the context then?
Kiyosaki wrote this as a direct counter-argument to what he saw as this cultural game show mentality. You have to think back to when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was the biggest thing on television.
Oh, I remember that. Absolutely. It completely captured the zeitgeist. I remember sitting on the couch, shouting answers at the TV, thinking, man, if I just knew who the 14th president was, I'd never have to work again.
We all did. And that's the point. It sold this idea, this fantasy, that wealth is just one lucky breakaway.
That it's an event.
It's an event, precisely. It's a lottery ticket or a lucky stock pick or answering 12 questions correctly on a game show. Confetti falls from the ceiling and poof, all your problems are over.
Yeah, the fairy tale ending.
And Kiyosaki's mission here is to completely dismantle that entire idea. He wants to explore the concept of the price of wealth. And he's not talking about the sticker price on a luxury car.
He means something deeper.
Much deeper. He's talking about an internal, almost philosophical price. It's about shifting how you view cheapness, how you process your own mistakes, and, maybe most importantly, how you define education itself.
So we're moving away from the event of getting rich and looking at the process, or maybe the character shift that's required to even get there.
That's the core of it, because let's be honest, most people want the event.
They want the check.
They want the check. They don't necessarily want the character shift that comes with it.
That's the hard part.
And to prove why the standard advice fails so many people, the source material opens with some really heavy statistics from the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare.
Okay.
They tracked a group of people from age 20 all the way to age 65. So these are people who had 45 years, a full working career, to figure it all out.
45 years? That's a long time. The results must be pretty definitive then.
They were startling. By age 65, out of 100 people, only one was truly wealthy.
One. Just 1%.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it. 1%. 4 more were considered well off, so, comfortable. They weren't worrying about bills, but they weren't tycoons by any stretch.
So that's 5 people out of 100 who are financially okay.
Right. Then, another 5 were still working because they had to. They simply couldn't afford to stop. They're still grinding away at 65, not by choice, but out of pure necessity.
Wow. Okay, so that's 10% accounted for. 1 rich, 4 comfortable, 5 still grinding. That leaves 90 people. This is the scary part, isn't it?
This is the scary part. 54 of them were dependent on family or government support just to survive.
More than half.
Over half the group. And the remaining 36 were dead.
Those are just incredibly grim odds. It really shines a light on the fact that the default path, the one most people are on, where you just go to work, save a little, and hope for the best, it leads to dependency, not freedom.
It's essentially a coin toss between being broke or being dead.
So the central question of this whole deep dive then is, what did that one solitary person in the 100 do differently? What price did they pay that the other 99 refused to?
Exactly. And to illustrate this, Kiyosaki uses this great analogy involving Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Ah, yes, I remember this from the notes. It's about the difference between wanting the result and wanting the process.
Yeah.
It's the classic gym dilemma, right?
It's exactly that. He asks you to imagine walking up to Arnold in his prime, Mr. Olympia, pumping iron and saying, "I wish I had a body like yours."
Okay.
Now, most people, when they look at Arnold, they see the result. They see the fame, the strength, the aesthetic, the finished product.
They don't see the thousands of hours in the gym.
They don't. So if you told them, okay, that's possible, all you have to do is hit the gym for 3 hours a day, run 5 miles every morning, and stop eating pizza immediately, what happens?
The enthusiasm just, it evaporates instantly. The average person's internal reaction is, ugh, is there a pill I can take for that? Or maybe one of those machines that vibrates my abs while I watch TV and eat Doritos.
We want the body, but we don't want the sweat. We want the victory without the battle.
Yeah.
Financial wealth operates on the exact same mechanism. We see the millionaire lifestyle, the freedom, the toys, the travel, and we say, I want that. But when you're told the price involves intense financial education, mastering the psychological stress of taking on debt, and facing the very real fear of losing money,
the reaction is, can I just cut up my credit cards and save $5 a week instead?
it's the financial equivalent of the magic weight loss pill.
It is. Cutting up the cards is appealing because it's a negative action. It's abstinence. It doesn't require learning a new skill set. It just requires stopping a behavior.
That's a great way to put it.
It feels like you're doing something, but you're really just avoiding the gym.
You've hit the nail on the head. And this deep resistance to learning new skills, to paying that price, leads us directly into the first major section of our analysis, the price of being cheap.
Okay, let's get into this, because living below your means is practically the golden rule of the middle class. I mean, I was certainly raised with it.
Weren't we all?
Turn off the lights when you leave the room, buy the used car, save your pennies, reuse the aluminum foil. It feels responsible. It feels safe. So why does this source argue that there's a dark side to all that?
Rich Dad's philosophy is really quite cutting on this topic. He told Robert, and this is a quote, "You can become rich by being cheap. But the problem is, even though you're rich, you're still cheap."
Ouch. That stings. It implies that the money doesn't actually solve the poverty mindset. You just become a hoarder with a bigger bank account.
Right. You're still operating from a place of scarcity, even if you're sitting on $1 million.
And it goes beyond just your own mindset.
Right.
He says it affects your legacy.
It does. Kiyosaki observed this pattern he called the starving hyenas phenomenon.
Starving hyenas. Okay, tell me more.
He noticed that people who spent their entire lives scrimping, saving, and denying themselves every little pleasure to build up a nest egg, they often failed to pass on any financial intelligence to their children.
Because they were too busy teaching them how to save, not how to manage or grow wealth.
Exactly. They taught them how to be poor, in a sense, while sitting on this pile of money.
So then what happens?
The parents pass away. They leave this pile of cash to children who have absolutely no idea how to handle it. For the kids, it's like a lottery win.
It's an event.
It's an event. They haven't built the discipline or the intelligence to maintain it, so they fight over it like starving hyenas. The money gets consumed rapidly on liabilities, fancy cars, vacations, bad investments, and the legacy that took a lifetime of suffering to build is just destroyed in a few years.
That is just tragic. You suffer for decades, you deny yourself that daily coffee or that nice car just to fuel a family feud and a shopping spree for your kids who then blow it all.
And there's a social price to cheapness, too. Think about it. The world generally recoils from the Scrooge character.
Yeah, nobody likes a cheapskate.
Kiyosaki notes that we are naturally drawn to generous people. We want to be around people who are expansive and open. Being cheap closes you off from networks and opportunities because people just don't want to do business with someone who squeezes every last penny.
If you're always looking to underpay, you attract low-quality partners. That makes sense.
But the most intellectually fascinating part of this section is how he applies physics to finance. He brings in Newton's third law.
Newton's law. Okay, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. How on earth does that apply to my 401k or my job security?
He applies it to the concepts of security and freedom. These are the two things everyone says they want. I want to be secure and I want to be free.
Right. Sounds good to me.
But Rich Dad argues they are opposites on the spectrum. If you chase security, that's the action. The equal and opposite reaction is a loss of freedom.
Walk me through that logic. Why can't I be secure and free at the same time?
Well, think about the ultimate security. A maximum security prison.
Okay, not where I thought you were going, but I'm with you.
You have total job security if you work in the laundry. You have food security, shelter security. You know exactly where you'll be tomorrow. But you have zero freedom.
Right. Got it.
In the workforce, it's a less extreme version of that. If you cling tightly to a secure job, you are bound to your employer. You trade control of your time and your income for that feeling of safety. You pay the highest taxes because you're an employee. You are secure, but you are not free to act.
You can't just take off for a month if you feel like it. You can't decide to double your income next week just because you want to.
Exactly. The more you insulate yourself from risk, the more you restrict your own movement.
So the question becomes, if I want freedom, do I have to be insecure? Do I have to live on the edge, constantly worrying about where my next meal is coming from?
That's precisely what Robert asks his rich dad. It seems like a binary choice, right? A or B. And rich dad said, no, you can have both, but to have both, you must pay twice the price.
The double price. That sounds expensive.
It is. Most people only pay the price for one, security. They go to school, they get a job, and then they stop learning. That's the price for security, compliance, and conformity.
Okay.
To have security and freedom, you have to pay that initial price. Plus, you have to pay the price of learning how to invest, how to build businesses, how to manage risk. You have to master two completely distinct skill sets.
You need to know how to be a worker, but you also have to know how to be an owner.
You've got it. And this reminds me of that duality concept they discuss, the one about the detective and the crook. It's a bit of a gritty analogy, but it works so well.
Yeah, the paradox of duality. Lay that out.
To be a truly effective detective, you have to be able to think exactly like a criminal. You have to understand the motive, the method, the opportunity. You have to anticipate what the crook will do next.
If you only think like a good citizen who follows all the rules, you'll never catch the bad guy because you can't even imagine breaking the rules in the first place.
Right. But you don't become the crook. You just house that mindset. You have the capability, but you choose to operate on the side of the law.
So how does this apply to money?
Rich Dad applies it directly. To be a good banker, which represents the conservative, security-focused side of the coin, you must also understand the gambler, the risk-taker, the entrepreneur.
Ah, okay. So if you're just a gambler, you're reckless and you lose everything. You bet the farm on black and go broke.
Correct.
But if you're just a banker, you're too conservative. You hoard cash, and inflation just eats you alive while you miss out on all the growth opportunities.
So you have to house both identities within yourself. You have to be able to be both. Being cheap creates a cheap reality where your world shrinks because you were so afraid of loss. Expanding your means requires seeing both sides, risk and safety, and learning how to manage them simultaneously.
That's the real price of wealth, then. It's an intellectual and an emotional expansion, not just a bigger bank balance.
It's about being comfortable with the tension between safety and risk.
I love that framing. It's not about choosing A or B. It's about becoming capable of handling both A and B, which, honestly, sounds like it requires a lot of learning. And probably a fair amount of screwing up along the way.
They're not wrong.
You don't learn to balance risk without taking some hits, right?
Which leads us perfectly into the next major hurdle that keeps people poor, the price of a mistake.
This is chapter 2. And this section opens with a really vulnerable story from Robert Kiyosaki. He talks about failing English when he was 15.
It was a pivotal trauma for him. It really was. He failed because he couldn't write well, and his teacher didn't like his ideas. So he was looking at the prospect of repeating his sophomore year of high school.
Which, for a high school kid, that's social death. The shame of it, the big red F on the paper, watching his younger sister, who was a smart academic one, move on to the next grade while he's held back.
And you have to remember who his biological father was. His poor dad.
He was the superintendent of education for the state of Hawaii. The man was the ultimate academic. He had a PhD. His entire identity was wrapped up in grades and school.
So he must have been mortified that his own son was flunking out.
To poor Dad, a mistake was a defect. It was something to be punished or hidden or fixed immediately. He saw failure as a noun. Robert was a failure because he failed the class. It became an identity marker for him.
But Rich Dad, his friend's father, the businessman, he had a completely different take on it.
A radical one from the sound of it.
Completely. Rich Dad saw failure as a verb, not a noun. He told Robert, you don't become a failure until you quit or you start blaming other people.
So he saw the mistake as just a data point.
A necessary data point in the learning process. He asked Robert, what did you learn from this? Instead of asking, how could you be so stupid?
Fail is a verb, not a noun. I'm writing that down. It's so easy to say, but it's so hard to live by when everyone around you is criticizing you. When you get that F or you lose that money on an investment, it feels like the whole world is judging you.
And that fear of criticism is exactly why Rich Dad taught the boys the 33% rule. This is a tool for emotional resilience.
Okay, what's the 33% rule?
He told them that in life, no matter what you do, roughly 33% of people will love you. They're your tribe. They get you.
Got it.
Another 33% will dislike you, regardless of what you do. You could cure cancer, and they'd complain that you put doctors out of work. You just can't win with them.
Yeah, I know a few people like that. And the last third?
The final 33%, they just won't care either way. They're too busy with their own lives to even notice you.
That is surprisingly liberating. It basically says you can't please everyone, so you should stop trying.
He explained that the fear of criticism, which is really, an evolutionary fear of being ostracized from the herd, is what keeps people poor. The average person cannot handle the thought that a third of the people they know might think they're an idiot or a crook.
So they conform. They play it safe to avoid that criticism.
They don't buy the investment property because their brother-in-law will call it risky. They don't start the business because their mom will worry about them. They try to please the 33% that are never going to like them anyway.
Which is a fool's errand. You stifle your own potential just to avoid an uncomfortable conversation at Thanksgiving dinner.
That's it. Rich Dad said if you want to be a leader or you want to be wealthy, you have to be willing to be criticized. In fact, if nobody is criticizing you, you're probably not doing anything significant. You're just blending in.
Okay, so Robert fails English. He's dealing with all this criticism. But then Rich Dad drops this bombshell on him about report cards that completely reframes the entire situation.
This is the real aha moment of this whole section. Robert is crying over his grades. He's worried his life is over. And Rich Dad just looks at him calmly and says, Robert, my banker has never once asked me for my report card.
That is such a profound statement when you really stop and think about it. We spent the first 22 years of our lives obsessed with GPA, with SAT scores, with all this academic validation.
We're trained to think that this piece of paper defines our worth.
And Rich Dad is just saying, none of that matters to the people who actually hold the capital.
It matters for getting a job. Let's be clear about that. If you want to be an employee, grades are your ticket in the door. Corporations look at grades to filter applicants. But for building wealth, for being an entrepreneur or an investor, No. The banker doesn't care if you got an A in English or a D in history.
The banker wants to see your financial statement.
That's it. The financial statement, your income statement, and your balance sheet, that is the report card for your adult life.
And this highlights this massive, massive disconnect in our society. You have people who are A, students, doctors, lawyers, engineers, who have failing financial report cards.
Absolutely. They have high income, sure, but they also have massive liabilities, huge amounts of bad debt, and zero real assets that produce cash flow. They are technically failing the game of wealth, even though they won the game of school.
They're earning an A in professional education, but a big fat F in financial education.
And the banker sees the F. That's the only grade the banker cares about. They ask for balance sheets and P&Ls, not GPAs. That's the metric that matters.
It's so interesting because school punishes mistakes. You get an answer wrong on a test, your grade goes down, it's a penalty.
Right.
But in business, a lot of the time you have to get things wrong to figure out what the market wants.
Yeah.
Mistakes are R&D.
Yes. Rich Dad pointed out that titans of industry like Thomas Edison or J. Paul Getty, they made way more mistakes than the average person. They just extracted value from every single one of them.
Edison found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
And that wasn't failure, that was education. The loser, in Rich Dad's definition, isn't someone who fails, it's someone who cannot afford to lose.
Okay, you've got to unpack that for me. Cannot afford to lose. What does that mean in practical terms?
Think about the red line on a car's tachometer. There's that red area on the dial. If you run the engine in the red zone constantly, it overheats and blows up. Most people live their financial lives at the red line. Their income equals their expenses. Every single dollar that comes in goes right back out to pay for the past or the present, the mortgage, the car payments, the credit cards. They have no margin for error.
They're just treading water with weights on their ankles.
A perfect description.
Yeah.
And because they are at the red line, they cannot afford to lose. If they invest $5,000 and that investment goes to zero, they can't pay their mortgage next month.
So they can never take the risk that's required to actually win big.
They can't. A professional gambler knows they will lose hands, but they budget for it. They have a bankroll. They can afford the loss, so they can stay in the game long enough to eventually hit the jackpot. A loser is someone who bets the rent money, loses, and is out of the game entirely.
So if you're living at the red line, you're basically forced to be a loser in his definition because you have no buffer. You can't take the risk to buy that mini storage facility because if the deal goes wrong, you're homeless.
Correct. So the first step to winning isn't buying the Porsche. It's getting yourself off the red line. It's building the capacity to take a hit and survive.
Which is all about education. And this leads us directly into Chapter 3, the price of education. Because if school grades don't matter to the banker, does school even matter at all? Is he just advocating for everyone to drop out and hustle?
Not at all. In fact, he argues that education is more important in the information age than it ever was before. But we need to distinguish between the three different types of education to understand where the gap in the system is.
Okay, lay them out for us. Because I think most people just conflate school with education. They think it's the same thing.
They do. The first type is scholastic education. This is reading, writing, math. It's the absolute foundation. You need this to function in modern society. You need to be able to read a contract and count your change.
Basic literacy. Got it. Non-negotiable.
The second type is professional education. This teaches you a specific skill so you can work for money. You learn to be a plumber, a pilot, a programmer, a doctor. This is where most of the world stops.
Right. They get good scholastic grades to get into a good professional school, to get a good, quote-unquote, safe job.
That's the standard path, the American dream path. Go to college, get a trade, work for 40 years, and then retire.
But the third type is the missing link.
This is the one, financial education. This is the skill of having your money work for you.
And this is the one that is conspicuously absent from the school curriculum. I mean, I certainly didn't have a Money 101 class in high school. I learned about the War of 1812, but I didn't learn what a mortgage amortization schedule was.
Nobody did. And the real danger in that lies in what the book calls lag time.
Lag time. What does that mean?
The source discusses how massive institutions like education and construction have this huge lag time, sometimes 50 years, between a new reality emerging in the world and the institution actually adapting to it.
So they're always behind.
Way behind. We are currently living in the information age, but our schools are still largely operating on the industrial age model.
The industrial age model being get a secure job with a big company, stay there for 40 years, get a pension, and retire with a gold watch.
Exactly. And that model is dead. It died somewhere in the 1980s or 90s. Pensions have been replaced by 401ks, which rely on the stock market. Job security is a myth. We're a nation of free agents now, moving from project to project.
But schools are still training compliant employees for a world that no longer exists.
They're training people for a world that is 50 years out of date. And in the information age, information moves so fast. If you're 50 years behind, you're not just behind, you are ancient history.
Moore's Law.
Exactly. Moore's Law tells us that information and technology double in power every 18 months. If you're relying on what you learned in college 20 years ago, you are obsolete. In the information age, it's not about what you know, because that changes constantly. It's about how fast you can learn.
So the true price of education isn't the tuition fee. It's the constant, lifelong effort to keep upgrading your mental software. You can't just get a degree and say, okay, I'm done learning now.
Yes. And to help with that process, to make financial education more accessible, Kiyosaki created the Cash A Flow game.
Ah, I've seen this game. It looks kind of like Monopoly, but with a lot more paperwork. You have to fill out a balance sheet while you play.
That's a fair description, but it's designed as a simulator. You see, reading a book is a mental activity. It's abstract. You can read a book on how to swim, but that doesn't mean you won't drown when you jump the pool for the first time.
Right, you have to actually get in the water.
Playing a game is physical and emotional. The game forces you to fill out a financial statement over and over as you play.
Which I imagine most people hate doing. It feels like homework.
They hate it because it's accountability.
Yeah.
In the game, there's a rule that you have an auditor, the person sitting on your right, who has to check your math on every transaction.
Oh, that's clever.
And Kiyosaki points out that the reason we resist financial statements in real life is because looking at them is often like looking at a report card that's full of Fs. It's painful.
It's like stepping on the scale after the holidays. You know it's probably going to be bad, so you just avoid it to protect your ego. If I don't look at the number, I'm not overweight. If I don't look at my bank account, I'm not broke.
But accounting is accountability. You cannot fix what you do not face. The price of education involves the willingness to look at the numbers, admit the truth of where you are, and then learn how to change them.
The game teaches you to disassociate the emotion from the numbers. The numbers are just feedback. They're not a judgment on your soul.
Precisely. They are just a score in the game, and you can learn to get a better score.
Okay, so we've covered the mindset, the approach to mistakes, and the type of education needed. Now we have to get to the tactical part, the part that everyone argues about, the strategy, good debt versus bad debt. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Come back to continue Rich Dad's Guide to Becoming Rich.
It is genuinely good to be back. And, you know, today we're tackling something that feels a little counterintuitive, a little dangerous even.
It really does. I mean, usually when we pick up a personal finance book for one of these deep dives, I brace myself. I know it's coming.
Oh, yeah. The lecture.
Exactly. The lecture. I'm going to be told I'm a terrible person for buying a $5 coffee, that my Netflix subscription is the real reason I'm not a millionaire. It's always this message of, just suffer. Suffer now, eat rice and beans for 40 years, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get to retire and not be a burden.
The whole financial Puritanism thing. It's like suffering is a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the dominant narrative, isn't it?
It's the absolute gospel. You turn on the TV, you listen to any of the big gurus, and it's always the same song. Get out the scissors, cut up the credit cards.
Live below your means.
Live below your means. It's safe advice, I guess. It's simple. But the book we're diving into today basically throws a grenade into that entire philosophy and says that advice might actually be the very thing that's keeping you poor.
It's such a provocative statement. I mean, it just flies in the face of everything we've ever been told about money.
Yeah.
It sounds, frankly, a little reckless.
Incredibly reckless. It feels like telling someone on a diet, and you know what? Go eat that cheesecake. But that's exactly why I'm so excited for this. We are looking at Rich Dad's Guide to Becoming Rich Without Cutting Up Your Credit Cards by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter.
And we should be clear about the mission here. This isn't just a rehash of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
No. We're past that. We're not doing the your house is not an asset 101 level stuff today. We've been there. We've done that.
This is the advanced course. This is the 401 class. We're moving beyond the basics and getting into the real mechanics of it. We're talking about good debt versus bad debt, but in a really practical, nuts and bolts way.
And the psychology. The psychology of why it's so hard to change. Why your banker doesn't care about your GPA. Which is a tough one for a lot of people to swallow.
It really is. But to set the stage, we have to grasp the central argument of this book. The authors are saying that cutting up your cards is just treating a symptom.
It's a temporary fix.
It's a temporary fix for what is a permanent problem. The problem isn't the piece of plastic in your wallet. The disease, if you will, is a fundamental lack of financial literacy. It's not knowing how the game is played.
Okay, so if the plan isn't to take a pair of scissors to our visas, what's the roadmap for this deep dive? Because I don't want someone listening to this to just hear, keep your credit cards, hang up, and go on a shopping spree.
Right. That would be a complete disaster, and that is absolutely not the message here. So we need to be very deliberate. We're going to break this down into a few key sections, basically following the book's structure.
Okay.
First, we have to tackle that core idea. We'll look at chapter 4, which is all about the real price of cutting up your cards. And we'll dig into that crash diet analogy you mentioned.
I love that one. Then what's next?
Then we get to the fun part, the part everyone wants to hear about. We're calling it the Porsche strategy.
Ah, yes. How to have nice things.
Exactly. How to buy a luxury item like a collectible sports car without actually using your own money or becoming poorer in the process. It sounds like magic, but it's really just smarter accounting.
Okay, I'm in.
From there, though, we have to get serious for a minute, a reality check. The book has a quiz to help you figure out how much debt you really have and what kind of trouble you might be in.
And then we get into the psychology of it all. Chapter 6, why statistically 99 out of 100 people just don't make it to wealthy status.
And we'll wrap it all up with this concept of the financial report card and the power of accountability. It really is a total mindset shift.
All right, let's do it. Section 1, the price of cutting up your credit cards. The book kicks this off with that analogy we touched on, comparing financial frugality to dieting. And look, as someone who has tried and failed at pretty much every diet ever invented, this one hit me right between the eyes.
It's a perfect parallel, isn't it?
Right.
Kiyosaki makes this direct comparison between a crash diet and what he calls financial abstinence. And just think about how a crash diet usually starts.
It starts with self-loathing. You look in the mirror one day, the lighting's bad, and you just feel disgusted.
Right. It's an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
You feel bad. So you decide on this extreme course of action. That's it. No more carbs, no more sugar, no more joy in my life. From now on, it's just carrot sticks and water.
And for the first few days, you feel righteous. You're starving, you're miserable, you're a nightmare to be around, but you step on the scale and you've lost 3 pounds.
Exactly. You're suffering, but you're seeing a result on the scale, so you think it's working. But here's the critical question the book asks. Have you actually learned anything about nutrition?
No.
Have you learned about your metabolism? Have you developed a healthier relationship with food? No. All you've done is restrict access. You've put a padlock on the cookie jar. So what happens? Inevitably.
You break. You're at a party or you're just walking through the mall and you smell the Cinnabon.
And it's over. And you don't just have one bite. You have the whole thing. You binge. And when the dust settles, a week later, you've gained back the 3 pounds you lost, plus 2 more for good measure.
The classic yo-yo diet. We've all seen it or done it.
And Kiyosaki's point is that the standard advice to cut up your credit cards creates this exact same yo-yo economy in your personal finances.
Because you haven't actually fixed the root problem, the reason you got into debt in the first place.
Precisely. You haven't changed the underlying behavior. You haven't changed your values around money or your understanding of how it works. You've just taken away the tool. So, okay, you go on a spending fast. You live on beans and rice for 2 years to pay off your debt.
You feel like a financial hero. You get that balance down to zero.
You feel like a conqueror. But then you feel deprived. You feel like you deserve something nice for all that suffering.
And wham, you go out and finance a brand new SUV. Or you book that trip to Bali you've been dreaming of. And you're right back where you started, but often in even deeper debt.
The source argues the goal shouldn't be to get rid of the credit card. The goal is to get smart enough to use the credit card as a tool for your benefit, not your detriment.
He uses another analogy, right? It's like blaming the fork for making you fat.
That's the one. The fork is just a tool. It's a neutral object that delivers food to your mouth. But you are the one controlling your hand. The credit card is the same. It's just a tool that facilitates a transaction. You're the one making the decision.
So if you're overweight, throwing away all your forks isn't a long-term solution.
And if you're broke, cutting up your cards isn't going to make you rich. It's the person holding the tool that needs the education. The mindset needs to change.
You know, the book tells this story about a couple he calls Beauty and the Beast, and it's such a perfect illustration of this idea of looking rich versus actually being rich. This felt very Keeping Up with the Joneses to me.
Oh, it's the classic American trap. And we all know a couple like this. They're friends of the author. And from the outside, they look like they have it all.
The perfect Instagram life.
Totally. They're attractive. They're fit. That's the beauty part. They both have these high-powered corporate jobs, maybe pulling in $250,000 a year combined. Big house in a fancy suburb, a nanny, a landscaper, 2 shiny new luxury cars in the driveway. They are the poster children for the American dream.
But there's a beast lurking under the surface.
The beast is the debt. The beast is their total lack of financial discipline. They have a massive income, but they spend every single penny of it and then some more. The book details their whole system.
Which is terrifying.
It is. When the credit card bills get too high, they don't stop spending. They just go out and apply for a new credit card with a 0% introductory offer, and they use that new card to pay off the old one.
Just kicking the can down the road.
Or, even worse, they'll wait for their house to go up in value, and then they'll take out a home equity loan against it and use that cash to wipe out all their credit card debt.
Wow. That's taking unsecured debt and turning it into secured debt. You're putting your house on the line for last year's vacation and some fancy dinners.
It's financial insanity. If you default on your Visa bill, they can ruin your credit score and harass you with phone calls. If you default on your home equity loan, they take your house. You're on the street. But this couple does it because it lowers their total monthly payment, which frees up cash flow.
So they can go spend more.
So they can go run the credit cards right back up again. Kiyosaki calls it pushing the string forward. They're not solving the problem. They're just refinancing it over and over. And the scary part is the banks love them.
Of course they do. They're profitable customers.
They're the most profitable customers. They have high incomes, so they look good on paper, and they pay staggering amounts of interest. They're basically working for the bank. But they aren't building any real wealth. Their lifestyle is a house of cards. One layoff, one medical emergency, and the whole thing comes crashing down.
Now, to be fair, Robert Kiyosaki is very open about the fact that he's been there himself. This isn't just him looking down from an ivory tower. He shares a really raw story about his own financial train wreck back in the late 70s.
He does, and I think that's important. It gives him credibility. He wasn't born a financial genius. Back in his 20s, he started a business making those nylon and Velcro surfer wallets.
I totally had one of those, the sound of that Velcro.
I sound of the 80s.
Wow.
Well, that business took off. It exploded. And he became, on paper at least, a millionaire while he was still in his 20s. But he admits it went straight to his head. He started buying Porsches and Mercedes before he had the asset base to support them.
He started playing the part of a rich guy.
He thought the money would never stop rolling in. He says his financial IQ actually went down as his income went up because he got arrogant and sloppy.
That's a really common trap. Money just makes you more of what you already are. If you're a fool with a little money, a lot of money just makes you a bigger fool.
And then the crash came. The market for his wallets changed, he had issues with his partners, and because he was so over-leveraged personally, it was a total wipeout. He went from being a paper millionaire to owing nearly $1 million in actual real debt. He lost everything.
And this is where his rich dad mentor steps in.
Right. And Rich Dad, he did not give him a hug. He didn't say, "Oh, you poor thing, it'll be okay." He didn't offer to bail him out.
Tough love.
The toughest. He asked to see Robert's financial statement, the numbers. He looked at it and just said, "This is a financial train wreck."
Yeah.
But the lesson he gave wasn't, "You spent too much money on cars." The lesson was much more profound. It was about the type of debt he had.
What did he say?
Rich Dad told him, "You have successfully converted $1 million of good debt into $1 million of bad debt."
Okay, this is the absolute core of the whole philosophy. We need to nail these definitions down because for 99% of people, the word debt just means bad. It's a 4-letter word.
It is. We're conditioned to fear it. But according to the source, the distinction is actually very simple, but it requires you to completely rewire your brain.
Let's hear it.
Good debt is any debt that someone else pays for you. Bad debt is debt that you have to pay for with your own sweat, blood, and tears.
Okay, give me the classic, undeniable example of good debt.
The mortgage on a rental property. Let's say you buy a small apartment building. You get a loan from the bank. That's debt. You owe them, say, $500,000. But you have tenants in the building.
Yeah.
Every month they pay you rent.
Right.
That rent money comes in. First, you use it to pay the mortgage payment to the bank. Then you use it to pay the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance fund for when the water heater breaks. And after all of those expenses are paid, there's still a few $100s left over. That money goes directly into your pocket.
So the building is paying for its own debt and then paying you on top of that.
Your tenants are paying down your debt for you. You get the benefit of owning the asset, the tax deductions, the appreciation in value, but you aren't using your own paycheck to pay the bank. That debt is putting money in your pocket every month. That's good debt.
And bad debt is the opposite.
It's the loan on the car you drive to work. It's the balance on your credit card from buying groceries and clothes and going out to dinner. For that debt, you have to wake up in the morning, drive to your job, work all day, get a paycheck, have taxes taken out of it, and then use what's left to pay Visa. It's taking money out of your pocket.
So when you hear that statistic that the rich have more debt than the poor, it's technically true.
It is absolutely statistically true. A real estate mogul or a big corporation might have billions of dollars in debt on their balance sheet, but it's almost all good debt. It's debt that's being serviced by the cash flow from their assets. They're using OPM, other people's money, to get rich.
The source uses another great analogy for this. Rich Dad says debt is like a loaded gun.
I love this one because it completely removes the morality from it. A loaded gun is just an object. It's not inherently good or evil. In the hands of a responsible, trained person, it can be a tool for protection. It can put food on the table.
But in the hands of a child.
In the hands of a child or a fool, it's incredibly dangerous. It can kill you. It all depends on the education and the respect of the person holding it.
And most mainstream financial advice treats the general public like children.
Exactly. The advice is, don't touch the gun, you'll shoot your eye out. Cut up the credit cards, freeze them in a block of ice, never borrow money for anything. And you know what? For someone with zero financial education, that is probably good advice.
Because they'll just use it to shoot themselves in the foot.
They'll use it to buy doodads and depreciating liabilities, and the gun will go off and destroy their financial life. But the rich, they learn how to handle the gun. They use it as a tool to acquire assets. They respect its power, but they don't fear it. They master it.
That reframes the whole conversation. Debt isn't a sin to be avoided. It's a powerful tool that requires skill.
the high-stakes tool.
Uh,
And that leads us perfectly into the next section. Okay, so we understand the theory, but how do you actually apply it? This is where we get into the famous Porsche strategy.
this is my favorite part of the book, hands down, because it directly answers that question that I think everybody has, which is, okay, but I work hard. I want to have some nice things in my life. Do I have to drive a 20-year-old beater forever? And the answer is no, but.
No, but you have to be smart about how you buy them.
Don't pay for them yourself. Get an asset to pay for them. So walk us through the story. The Porsche versus the mini storage. This is the blueprint.
Okay, so Robert Kiyosaki decides he wants a very specific car. It's a 1989 Porsche Speedster, a collectible. It's expensive. Now, at the same time, he has a friend who is following the conventional live below your means wisdom. And that friend goes out and buys a used car for $3,500.
And the friend is super proud of this, right? He's bragging about how smart he is.
Oh, he's feeling so smug. Look at me, I'm so frugal. I paid cash, I have no debt. But the reality of the situation is that the car is a piece of junk. It smokes, it smells bad, it's unreliable. He feels poor every time he gets behind the wheel. And financially, that $3,500 cash he spent is gone forever, and the asset it bought is depreciating to zero.
So he's actually getting poorer. Meanwhile, Robert goes to his wife, Kim, and says, I want to buy this Porsche.
Now, they had a rule in their relationship, a very important rule. They would never use bad debt or their own savings to buy a luxury item. That was a line they would not cross.
So Kim doesn't just say, no, we can't afford it.
No, because I can't afford it, is what his poor dad would say. It's a statement that shuts down your brain. Instead, she enforces their rule. She asks the question his rich dad taught them to ask, how can we afford it? She says, you can have the Porsche, but you have to go find an asset to pay for it first.
So she's challenging him to think, to be creative.
She's forcing him to expand his financial mind. So he doesn't just go to the bank and take out a simple car loan. He doesn't write a check from their savings account because that would deplete their capital. Instead, he goes asset hunting.
And he finds a mini storage facility.
He finds a mini storage facility in Texas that's for sale. It's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's just a bunch of metal doors and concrete.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic, low-maintenance, cash-flowing asset. People pay you rent to store their junk.
So what's the transaction look like?
He goes to the bank and borrows money to buy the storage facility. That's step one.
So he takes on debt.
He takes on good debt. Now, follow the flow of the money here. The storage facility starts generating rental income from all the tenants. That income is enough to cover the mortgage payment on the facility itself. It covers the property taxes, the insurance, the part-time manager's salary, and this is the magic part. After all of those expenses are paid, there is still enough cash flow left over each month to make the payment on the Porsche.
So the people storing their old furniture in Texas are literally buying him his Porsche in California.
100%. He's driving the Porsche, but his asset is paying for it. He hasn't used a dime of his own paycheck. Now, here's the part that really separates the rich mindset from the poor mindset. Let's fast forward 5 or 6 years. The loan on the Porsche is now completely paid off.
Okay, so what's the financial picture look like then?
Well, first he owns the Porsche free and clear. And because it was a collectible, it's probably held its value or maybe even appreciated. But more importantly, he still owns the mini storage facility.
Right. The asset is still there?
The asset is still there. The mortgage on it has been paid down significantly by the tenants. And now that the car payment is gone, that extra cash flow that was buying the Porsche is now pure profit going straight into his pocket every single month.
Now let's compare that to his friend with the $3,500 beater.
5 years later, that friend's car is probably in a junkyard. It's worth nothing. The $3,500 is gone forever. He has no asset. He has nothing to show for it except the memory of driving a smelly car. The friend got poorer. Robert got a luxury car and got richer in the process because he added a cash-flowing asset to his balance sheet.
It is such a profound shift in thinking. It's not about deprivation. It's about creation. It's not, I can't have this. It's, how can I build or buy an asset that will get this for me?
And to do that, you have to have some financial education. You have to understand how bankers think.
Let's talk about that. The book has a section on banker psychology that I found fascinating. It explains why the rich seem to get access to so much capital. Why do bankers love lending against real estate? But if I walk in and ask for $100,000 to buy Bitcoin, they look at me like I have 3 heads.
It all comes down to collateral and how the bank views risk. You have to remember, when you take out a loan, that loan becomes an asset on the bank's balance sheet. It's a product they sell that generates income for them through interest. They love real estate because it's real, it's tangible, it's dirt and bricks and mortar. If you stop paying your mortgage, they have a clear process. They can foreclose on the property, seize it, sell it, and get their money back. It's secured.
But a stock or a cryptocurrency isn't.
It's volatile. It's just numbers on a screen that can go down 50% overnight. The bank hates that kind of risk. They can't seize your shares and be confident they'll get their capital back, so they won't lend against it.
Yeah.
But because they're so willing to lend huge sums of money against real estate, it gives the investor access to the most powerful tool in finance: leverage.
Can you break down leverage for someone who might only think of it in like a physics context?
Sure, in finance, leverage just means using borrowed money to increase the potential return of an investment. It's how you do more with less. Let's use a simple example. Say you have $10,000 in cash.
Okay.
If you invest that in the stock market, you can buy exactly $10,000 worth of stocks.
Oh.
If the market goes up by 10%, your investment is now worth $11,000. You made a $1,000 profit. That's a 10% return on your cash. Not bad.
But with real estate.
With real estate, you can take that same $10,000 and use it as a 10% down payment on a $100,000 property.
Right.
The bank lends you the other $90,000. So your $10,000 in cash is now controlling a $100,000 asset.
So you're controlling 10 times the value of your cash.
Exactly. Now, let's say that property also appreciates by 10%. The property is now worth $110,000. You still owe the bank their $90,000, but your equity in the property has grown from $10,000 to $20,000. You made a $10,000 profit on a $10,000 cash investment.
That's a 100% return on your money.
That's a 100% return. In the stock market, you made 10%. With real estate and leverage, you made 100%. That is the power of good debt. That is the accelerator that the wealthy use to pull away from everyone else.
But, and this feels like a very important but, this only works if you know what you're doing. Leverage is a double-edged sword.
It's a massive but.
Yeah.
You can't just go buy any property and expect this to work. If you buy in a bad area or you can't find tenants, the roof needs to be replaced, and you have no cash reserves, that leverage works in reverse just as powerfully. It can wipe you out in a heartbeat.
Which is why the education part is so important.
It's everything. Kiyosaki mentions that he took a 3-day real estate course that cost him $385. His friend at the time mocked him for it. Why would you pay for a course? That's a waste of money. Just save the $385. Robert took the course, applied what he learned, and made millions. The friend saved $385. The return on investment for financial education, if you actually apply it, is infinite.
Okay, so we've established the principle. Debt can be a powerful tool. We've seen the Porsche strategy in action. But before anyone listening to this runs out to a real estate seminar, we need to pump the brakes. We need that reality check you mentioned. Section 3. How much debt do you really have?
This is the look in the mirror moment. It's the part that isn't as fun, but it's probably the most important. You cannot build a financial skyscraper on a foundation of quicksand. If you are drowning in bad debt, you are not ready to take on good debt.
You have to stop the bleeding first.
You have to stabilize the patient. And Chapter 5 of the book gives this really simple but effective financial health quiz. And I think we should just walk through a few of the questions right now.
Let's do it. So if you're listening, just answer these honestly in your head. No one's grading you. This is for you.
Okay, first question, and be really honest. Do you routinely pay your bills late? Not because you forgot, but because you were juggling money and the cash just wasn't in the account when the bill was due.
That's a huge red flag. Living on the float, that's a sign of a major cash flow problem.
It is. Okay, question 2. Have you ever hidden a purchase or a bill from your spouse or partner?
Oof, that's a big one. That's financial infidelity. You buy the new shoes and you sneak the bag into the closet hoping they won't notice.
It's a huge warning sign.
Yeah.
Because it means there's shame and fear and a total breakdown of communication about money in the relationship. You're not operating as a team. Okay, next question. Do you find yourself buying lottery tickets thinking that a big win is your only way out of your financial situation?
Relying on luck instead of a plan. The financial Hail Mary pass.
Exactly. And one more. Does your total consumer debt, so everything except your mortgage, exceed what you have saved in an emergency fund? In other words, do you owe more to your credit card companies than you have in the bank?
If people are answering yes to these questions, what does the book say that indicates?
The book has a scoring system. And if you answer yes to 6 or more of the questions in the full quiz, it says you are heading toward disaster. You are at the red line.
Like the red line on a car's tachometer.
Precisely. You are revving the engine so hard just to maintain your current speed that it's overheating. It's on the verge of blowing up. And if you're in that state, you cannot go looking for good debt yet. You have to cool the engine down. You have to get back into the safe zone.
So what's the plan for that? The book provides a specific program, right? Rich Dad's Emergency Cash Flow Program.
It does. And the very first step sounds completely insane to someone who's deep in debt. It's totally counterintuitive. Step 1 is pay yourself first.
Wait a minute. Even if you're behind on bills, even if you've got collection agencies calling you.
Even then, especially then, the book argues that if you follow the traditional path of paying all your creditors first, you pay the government, you pay the bank, you pay Visa, you pay the electric company, by the time you're done, there is never any money left over for you. It's a system designed to keep you broke.
So you have to break the pattern.
You have to develop the discipline and, frankly, the courage to set aside a small percentage of your income for your asset column before a single bill gets paid, even if it's just 1%, even if it's just $50. You pay yourself first.
I can just hear people screaming, but what if I come up short for the rent? That's terrifying.
And Kiyosaki's answer is, good, let the pressure build. If you pay yourself first and now you're short on the cable bill, that pressure will force you to get creative. It will force you to think. You'll find a way to earn an extra $100. You'll sell something on Facebook Marketplace. You'll pick up an extra shift. It forces you to expand your means. If you pay everyone else first, there's no pressure, so you just stay stuck.
Pressure makes diamonds. Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is the doodad cutback. We're not cutting up the credit cards, but we are putting them in the freezer, so to speak. You have to stop the bleeding. You identify all the unnecessary spending, the doodads, and you stop. It requires delayed gratification. If you're at the red line, you don't get the new iPhone. You don't go out for steak dinners. Not right now.
And then comes the actual debt reduction formula. This is very specific in the book. It's a strategic system.
It's a snowball method, which is a proven strategy, but with a rich dad twist. So here's how it works. First, you list out all of your consumer debts, from the smallest balance to the largest.
Okay.
Then you continue to pay only the absolute minimum payment on all of them, except for one. You don't try to spread your extra money around. You focus your firepower.
And you target the one with the smallest balance, not the highest interest rate?
Correct. You target the smallest balance first because you want a quick psychological win. You need to build momentum. Then you find an extra $150 to $200 a month.
From the doodad cutback or from a side hustle?
Exactly. And you apply that extra money to that one smallest balance card. You hammer it with everything you've got.
So you're paying the minimums on everything else, and then the minimum plus the extra $200 on that one target.
Right. And because it's the smallest balance, it gets paid off relatively quickly. And when it does, this is the key to the snowball, you take the entire amount you were paying on that now dead card, which is its old minimum payment, plus the extra $200, and you roll that entire amount onto the next smallest debt on your list.
Ah, so your payment amount grows with each debt you kill off.
It becomes an avalanche. Let's say card 1 had a $50 minimum. You're paying $250 on it. Now it's gone. You take that $250 and you add it to card 2's minimum payment of, say, $75. Now you're blasting card 2 with $325 a month. By the time you get to your last biggest debt, you might be throwing $1,000 a month at it. the momentum becomes unstoppable. The book claims that most people can be completely free of consumer debt in 5 to 7 years using this exact method.
That's a powerful and concrete plan. So, okay, we have the strategy. The math isn't complicated. But this brings us to the real mystery, doesn't it? If the plan is this straightforward, why don't more people do it?
And that is the billion-dollar question. And it's the perfect transition to Section 4, the price of change.
The statistics on this are they're grim.
They're really sobering. The source cites data from the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare that tracked a group of 100 people from the start of their careers to age 65. So what did life look like for them at the traditional retirement age?
It's not pretty.
Not at all. Out of 100 people, only one was wealthy. Just one. 4 were financially secure or well off. 5 were still working not because they wanted to, but because they had to. 54 were dependent on family or government support, like Social Security, to survive, and 36 were dead.
So only 1 out of 100 actually becomes wealthy? A 1% success rate? Why? What is so hard about this?
The book uses physics to explain it. It goes back to Sir Isaac Newton's first law of motion.
Newton's laws of finance. I like it.
Basically. What's the first law? A body at rest tends to stay at rest. It is just physically and psychologically easier to do nothing than to do something. It's easier to stay on the couch than to go to the gym. It's easier to keep doing the same financial habits you've always done, even if they're not working, which is the definition of insanity, than it is to start a completely new trajectory.
The inertia of our lives is incredibly powerful.
It is. And the price of becoming wealthy is the immense amount of initial energy required to overcome that inertia and change your momentum.
And this ties directly into Kiyosaki's famous cash flow quadrant, doesn't it?
It does. For anyone who isn't familiar, he divides the world of work into 4 quadrants. On the left side, you have E for employee and S for self-employed or small business owner. On the right side, you have B for big business owner, 500 plus employees, and I for investor.
And the book's argument is that true wealth is almost impossible to build on the left side of the quadrant.
Right. In the E and S quadrants, you're paying the highest percentage in taxes, and you have the least amount of control and leverage. To become that 1 in 100, you have to find a way to move to the B or I side.
But changing quadrants isn't as simple as just quitting your job. It's not just a career change.
It's a complete change of your core identity. Your values have to change. An employee, at their core, values security. That's why they want a steady paycheck and good benefits. An investor values freedom. Those are fundamentally different and often opposing worldviews. And that conflict brings us to what the book calls the learning pyramid.
This, I think, is the key to why so many smart people struggle financially.
It is. The source describes learning as a tetrahedron, which is a pyramid with 4 faces. The 4 points are mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual.
So mental is the what to do.
Mental is the knowledge. You can read this book. You can understand intellectually, okay, buy assets, not liabilities, use good debt. You can ace the test on the concepts. You have the mental part down cold. But that's not where the failure happens for most people. The blockage occurs at the emotional corner of the pyramid.
Fear.
Fear. Overwhelming fear. What if I invest in this property and I lose money? What if the stock market crashes right after I buy? What if my friends and family think I'm crazy for doing this? What if I fail and look like an idiot?
And that emotional fear is more powerful than the mental logic.
For most people, yes. The emotional fear completely short-circuits the mental understanding. And this creates what's called analysis paralysis. You know what you're supposed to do, but you are emotionally terrified to take the first physical step.
Yeah.
So you just read another book, you listen to another podcast, you build another spreadsheet, but you never actually do anything.
This is where the book takes a really intense turn. He brings in this idea of the warrior spirit from his time as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. This was a really powerful section.
It's a very visceral anecdote. He talks about a friend of his named Wayne who was in the LRRP's Long-Range Reconnaissance Patrol. These were the Special Forces guys who would go deep, deep behind enemy lines for days at a time, incredibly dangerous missions. And Wayne told him something that Robert said he never forgot. He said, dead men kept fighting.
What on earth does that mean?
It means that in those extreme life or death situations, you can be physically exhausted, you can be mentally drained, you can be emotionally terrified. You are, for all intents and purposes, dead in terms of your normal human capacity. But something else takes over, your spirit. That intangible primal will to survive, to complete the mission, to win against all odds, it overrides all the other inputs.
And how does he apply that to finance? I mean, we're not facing enemy fire when we're trying to buy a duplex.
No, but to your amygdala, your ancient reptilian brain, the fear can feel just as real. The fear of losing your life savings can trigger the same fight or flight response as a physical threat. It can feel like starvation, like death. Kiyosaki's point is that when that financial fear strikes, and it will strike, that is the moment you have to call upon your spirit.
Your inner warrior.
Your inner warrior.
Yeah.
He says, very bluntly, that he has a hard time empathizing with someone who's afraid of losing $10,000 in a real estate deal when he's seen young men lose their actual lives. You have to find that part of you that is willing to take the risk, to face the fear, and to act anyway. Because if you let the fear win every time, you are guaranteed to stay in the 99%. You'll stay safe and you'll stay poor.
But he's not advocating for pure recklessness. He makes a distinction between a wartime and peacetime mindset.
That's a crucial balance. You can't just be a berserker charging blindly into every deal. You also need to be a diplomat. You need to be both a gambler and a banker. A gambler understands and takes calculated risks. A banker understands how to manage and mitigate risk.
If you're only a banker, you're too conservative, and you never make any real returns.
And if you're only a gambler, you'll eventually lose everything because you have no discipline. The truly wealthy learn how to integrate both. They use their warrior spirit to overcome the fear and take action, but they use their banker mindset to structure the deals smartly and protect the downside.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the ultimate report card. If we're going to play this game as both a gambler and a banker, we need a way to keep score.
And the central maxim of this final section is simple but profound. Accounting leads to accountability.
Which is funny because most people I know would rather get a root canal than do their accounting.
They hate it. It's boring, it's tedious, it's just numbers. But worse than that, it forces you to confront the absolute unvarnished truth about your situation, and that can be painful. The book argues that the main reason people get into deep financial trouble is that they don't have a scorecard. They're flying blind.
In school, you get a report card every semester. You know if you're failing algebra.
Your parents know. Your teacher knows. There's a feedback loop. But in your adult financial life, there's no mandatory report card. Nobody sends you a statement at the end of the year that says, hey, you're failing at wealth building. The only feedback you get is when the credit card's declined or the foreclosure notice shows up in the mail.
Robert talks about this aha moment he had when he was young. His rich dad pointed out that when he went to a bank to get a loan, the banker never once asked to see his school report card.
That's such a key insight. The banker doesn't care if you got an A in history. They don't care if you went to Harvard or community college. They don't care if you were prom king. The banker asks for one thing and one thing only.
Your financial statement.
Your financial statement. That is the report card for adults. It's your income statement and your balance sheet. That's it. That's your grade in the real world.
And looking at your own financial statement for the first time, it can be a brutal experience.
Kiyosaki compares it to looking at a medical x-ray. It might show you something you don't want to see. It might show that you have financial cancer. It might show that you have a high income, but you also have zero real assets and a mountain of liabilities. It shows the truth of your financial habits.
But you have to be willing to look at it.
You have to look. You can't cure a disease you refuse to diagnose.
Yeah.
The book is very clear that self-correction is the only way out. You have to stop blaming the government or the economy or your boss or your parents. You have to take ownership. You have to look at that x-ray, and if your liability column is bloated with bad debt, you have to perform the surgery to remove it. If your asset column is empty, you have to start the work of filling it.
So if we bring this all together, The book is called Rich Dad's Guide to Becoming Rich Without Cutting Up Your Credit Cards. But it seems like the real message is that it's about becoming the kind of person who is financially intelligent enough that they don't need to cut up their cards.
That's it, exactly.
That's
It's
it.
not about the plastic, it's about the person holding it. It boils down to a few key principles. One,
Yeah.
you have to understand the fundamental difference between good debt that makes you rich and bad debt that makes you poor.
2, you have to learn how to use good debt strategically to acquire cash flowing assets, like in the Porsche strategy.
3, you have to face the brutal reality of your current situation, stabilize it by paying yourself first, and then systematically eliminate your bad debt.
And 4, you have to conquer the emotional fear of taking action by tapping into that inner warrior spirit.
It's all a shift away from the defensive mindset of living below your means. That's a philosophy of scarcity. It's about shrinking your life to fit your paycheck.
Making your world smaller.
Exactly. This is an offensive mindset. It's a philosophy of abundance. It's about expanding your means by acquiring assets so that your income can grow to fit the size of your dreams. To win the game of money, you have to play offense.
And that leads us to a really powerful final thought for our listeners. The source suggests that your financial statement is like a mirror. It doesn't judge you. It doesn't have an opinion. It just reflects back to you the sum total of your financial habits, your knowledge, and your courage.
So the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Are you willing to look at the X-ray right now, today? Most people would rather live in ignorance and just hope for the best, but hope is not a financial strategy. Are you brave enough to pull up a blank balance sheet, fill it out with total honesty, and just sit with the result? Because that moment, not the day you get a raise, not the day you win the lottery, but the day you finally face the math, that is the true beginning of your journey to wealth.
A challenge to end on. Thank you for watching. Please like him, share, subscribe, follow up in next video.